As we find ourselves in the middle of August, it's time to begin to think about how the rest of our irrigation season is going to play out. We've had a fairly light irrigation season for almost all of us thus far this season, but at the same time, we know that we're entering some of the most critical watering periods for both corn and soybeans that need to have attention and need to have their due diligence in order to preserve that yield. So with those things into consideration, I think it's time to circle back yet again and talk about irrigation strategies and where we're at with this growing season as we look forward to finishing off the growing season. I'm Keith Byerly, Precision Ag Manager at Central Valley Ag, and this is your agronomy focus video that corresponds with my article on the CVA blog site. So, for those of you that don't irrigate, I don't want you to tune this message out. What we talk about here as far as water needs with our crop is just as essential in dry land as it is in irrigated, but it's essential for different reasons. These factors in how we get moisture for the remainder of the year are going to influence our yield and going to influence the logistical things that we need to consider. Whether that's bin space, labor needs, or transportation, all of this still comes down to accurately assessing where we're going to be at yield-wise and where we're going to end up at with this crop. So, for those of you that are irrigators, I want you to consider where we're at today with our corn crop. We're entering the dent phase, or solidly in the dent phase right now, which means that we've got about a month of growing left and 5 to 7 inches of water need left for this corn crop. Now, where we're at today is about 60% dry matter accumulation. That means 40% of the weight, which is what you get paid on when you take it to the elevator, still has to be put into those kernels of corn from now until mid-September. That weight comes from that 5 to 7 inches of water. I've already heard a lot of people talking about the end of this irrigation season, and it's too early to talk about that. It's still too early to talk about that when we're down to our last 12 to 14 days and that last inch to 2 inches of water that this crop needs. Even the last 2 inches of water on a corn crop accounts for about 8% of our dry matter accumulation, which is the difference in test weight between 56 and 61 bushel corn. So, maintaining that yield, maintaining that moisture, and not shorting this crop is incredibly important for finishing out the corn. It's equally important when we talk about our soybeans. As we begin to enter the pod fill stage on these soybeans, we're still looking at 7 to 9 inches of water that this crop needs. In other words, we're needing more than an inch of water a week for the next 6 weeks to successfully finish out this crop. That means that most all of our dry matter still goes into these beans in the last 2 weeks. I've said it before and I'll say it again because it's critically important. Even once these beans begin to turn yellow, they still need 2 inches of water to successfully preserve and grow the final yield that makes the difference between a good crop and a great crop. So, even though we've had record or near record rainfall in some areas, even though our soil moisture looks pretty good overall, as we enter these days of August where we'll get the heat and we'll get the wind, we know that water use is going to go up and down, but we also know we're a long ways away from being done. To preserve our yield, to make sure we have success in this growing season, make sure you're monitoring your moisture probes every day, make sure you're doing your scouting operations and pulling those soil cores, and make sure you're communicating with your trusted advisor. Doing those steps will make sure that we get the water we need in our irrigated crops and will help us assess the true yield potential as we get into the month of September.